Hello and welcome to another episode of Anti-Agency Stories of Doing Business Differently. Excited to have our guest on today that I have had the pleasure of working with in a variety of different ways. I'd like to welcome Max Sher of Sher Agency. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. So let's not waste any time. Max, tell the audience a little bit about who you are, what you do, and a little bit about the agency.
Yeah, so we make websites for businesses. I've been running this agency for good 6 or 7 years, if you count my time as a freelancer, where I was figuring out what I was doing and what I wanted to be when I grew up. Yeah. Over that time, I really learned that web design is what I'm good at and what I want to focus on, and that's what I built a company around. So yeah, I've been doing that for quite a while, and that's what I do.
Awesome. So you started I'd like to dive a little bit deeper into kind of your journey. So did you, prior to starting, kind of doing your own thing, did you kind of work for other web agencies? Did you go down the kind of the traditional path of like 9 to 5 or doing this for other people, or what did you do before that?
Nothing. It was my very first thing I ever did.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, I had an internship at a law firm when I thought I wanted to be a lawyer when I was a kid in high school, and that was a no-go for me. Yeah. Not the life I wanted to live. But yeah, the company started when I was 18 years old. I was hanging out in a hookah lounge, and which is what you do when you're 18, right? Yeah. And I was just sitting there talking to some friends, and the owner had seen me before, and he came in. He goes, "Hey, Max, you're a computer guy, right?" I'm like, "Sure, I'm a computer guy." And he says, "I'm starting a grocery store. Can you build a grocery store website for me?" Now, I had never done anything remotely close to building a grocery store website, but I said what any 18-year-old who's overly confident for no reason would say, which is, yeah, I can do it. And I charged him $1,000. I asked for half up front. Yeah. I failed miserably after hiring a designer to build it all out for me. And it was so bad I couldn't even show it to him. Yeah. So I ended up I had to pay the designer. So I ended up trying to do it myself. And I did that's kind of a grocery store website. Yeah. Turned it into them. They hated it. I gave them their money back. And that's how I learned how to make websites. And that's how it started.
I love it. Well, we're opposite in that regard. You kind of got the ball rolling early on, whereas it was later in life for me, but we all have different paths to entrepreneurship. So I love that. So you started, you had mentioned you had started as a freelancer. So before, you didn't go balls in, like I business, like you were a freelancer and you kind of had a little bit of a transition into creating an actual agency. Is that how it kind of played out?
I think I always saw it in my head as I was going to have an agency. I had a enormous amount of confidence that I would be able to do it without knowing what that actually meant. Yeah. And on that first project, I tried to hire a freelance developer to do it for me. So I was always kind of in the mindset of, I want to have someone else do this work for me. However, I didn't have the experience either working for someone else or having someone work for me, which made that learning curve really hard for me. Yeah. And then I, took a step back. I actually was subcontracted by another agency for about 9 months, and I learned a lot there. Yeah. And then from after that, I was like, okay, it's time to start hiring. And then I started building my company.
Okay. So now you've got your agency. Was it always named Sher Agency right from the get-go? Did you kind of change or evolve over time, or?
So when that first guy hired me, I was like, oh gosh, I need to have a business now. That was my moment of panic where I'm like, I need to get official. I've got a client. So I created a sole proprietorship, I think, called Red Brand It, which I thought was super clever. It wasn't. It was lame. And then I was Max Sher Marketing. And then I think 3 years ago, I was like, if we're going to be an official agency, I should at least take my first name out of it. So I changed it to Sher Agency.
Okay. So you had mentioned in our kind of, before we kind of hit the record button here, that you didn't start out as just a web agency. So what was the scope of what you did out of the gate?
Everything. I think in retrospect, I had something that I wanted to prove to myself and to others. And I just wanted to do everything for everyone because, I actually could, to some degree, do most of the services. I couldn't do them all very well, but I could produce a newsletter. I could run Facebook ads. I was good at figuring things out and getting a B- on them. So I was doing that for just about every service, for every kind of business. And it was actually growing rather fast. I had 20 or 30 retainers, and it was super cool to see it grow and realize that I had the ability to do that. Yeah. But it was wearing down everybody in my business. We there was no scalability. We were stressed out every day. Like I was working until sundown. Like it was real brutal.
Yeah. No, your story is not lost on me. So you're doing all these different things, trying to be everything to everybody. You're not industry specific either, right? You'll do anything for anybody, correct?
Yep. Anything for anyone.
Okay. So at what happened, or at what point did you realize, you know what? I don't know that the everything to everybody approach can scale. What was that moment, and what did you do?
I was about 3 years in. So I was in my junior year of college. And I realized that everybody who was working for me hated their job. Mm-hmm. Like they loved working for me because I think, I mean, at least they told me they did, and they stayed with me through a really tough time. So I assumed that we had a good relationship, but the job itself was pretty much impossible for anybody to do well. Beyond that, I was super stressed out. I was a full-time student, and I was also managing this company that was growing, and it was near impossible. So I looked at it and I'm like, I built this to have freedom, not to build myself a job that I hate.
Yeah.
At what point do you take a step backwards to go forward? And it was actually someone gave me this book called Built to Sell by, I think it's John Warlow. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. I remember it. Yeah.
That showed me that, it doesn't have to be that way. And the thing that separates it from being the chaos to the structure is processes. And you can only build processes if you know what you're going to do in advance of doing it. Mm-hmm. So that's how I decided that it was time to focus on one service specifically. And in retrospect, maybe I should have done one industry as well, but one service specifically. And I picked what I'm best at, which is web design.
Yeah.
And I did something crazy. I let go of all my retainers.
Wow.
I was already kind of supporting myself financially at that point. Like I was kind of out from under my parents, like paying for my rent and stuff. So it was a scary thing to do for me. So I kind of like phased it out, right? So I took like 10 of them out one month, and then 10 the next month, and 10 the next, while I kind of built up the website.
Yeah.
But then on the employee side, it was scary too, because I kind of had to tell some people like, hey, we're not going to need your services anymore. Like they weren't employees. Actually, they were 1099, but, but still it was not a fun thing to do with people that you were working with every day.
But, I mean, obviously it was the right decision. I mean, we Socialistic started as a social media agency, so we didn't go necessarily through that process, but I certainly understand how trying to be everything to everybody is a formula for disaster. So you switched over to just doing web. I'm kind of curious, like, when you have that retainer business, obviously there's a level of comfort that comes with, assuming that you're continuing to deliver value to those clients. There's some predictability in your income as an agency. What was that transition like, going away from that towards project-based pricing, and then that constant need to, because if I'm going to guess here that by you going down the path of we're going to be a web agency and just being the very best at that the stability and predictability of the retainer world was offset by how much better you are at doing this one thing, and then the demand for that kind of offsetting, you're getting enough leads, or you're getting enough business for this thing that you do so much better, kind of offset. Is that kind of what happened with the business over time?
It is what happened over time. In the moment, I didn't have as much of a plan for that. Sure. In the first few years of business, I was actually quite impulsive, and I kind of just did things like as they came to my mind. Now, happy to say that I've dialed that back a bit, but it was very much okay, I know that I'm good at solving problems, and I will find a solution to this, but I can't let things go the way that they are. So what's the drastic action that I can take now? Yeah. And it was send out that mass email as of, June 9th, 2020 or whatever year it was, we're not going to be able to continue servicing your needs. And then from there, then I had that 60-day buffer, which was, okay, I need to go find a bunch of web projects and hire some people to actually fulfill those projects. And I need to write processes. So I kind of put myself under the gun there. You got to do it. You have no other option. Yeah.
How long did it take during that transition to kind of get to, how long was it before you realized yep, this was one of the best decisions we've ever made? Did success come pretty quickly with that, or?
It was already a good decision as soon as I made it. Like I had like the weight of the world off my shoulders,
Mhm.
and I was like, oh my gosh, like I forgot that it feels like this to not be constantly stressed out about churn rate, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and then as soon as I started getting some web contracts, probably within 3 months, I realized like I've got a system that works here. And now that
Mhm.
it was actually less so about sales and more about having a system that worked to produce the product, right? Like
Sure.
I realized like, okay, step 1, design, step 2, development, step 3, launch. Like I've got steps to what I do. Like this is how it should be. It's not everything is a fire. That feeling of relief was amazing.
That's awesome. So, I'm sure that either, there's people that are going to listen to this or eventually listen to it that are either running a web agency or thinking about it. So what's your, obviously when you think of, a project has a start and an end date, I mean, and I'm guessing a good number of the folks that you work with get into some sort of support role where there's a little bit of, ongoing revenue, from that sort of thing, but generally speaking. So, now you're thinking differently. You're not, have you reached a point with your agency where success has breeded enough success where you don't have to do a lot of self promotion? You're getting referrals. Like I'm just kind of curious what your world looks like in terms of client acquisition. How much of it is referral based? How much of it is inbound versus you really having to work hard to consistently create new opportunities for yourself?
That is my biggest day job, is creating new opportunities for myself. So I transitioned from being a person who fulfills these projects to
Sure.
a person who sells these projects.
Yeah.
And my current project in my business is, how do I get someone else to help me with that? How do I
Yeah.
stop being the person who finds the deal, closes the deal, and then passes it off to the team? Because then I've got a business and not a job that I've created for myself.
Yeah. What's the team dynamic? Like, what's your team breakout look like right now?
There are, I think, 10 full-time, and I think we've got a handful of other like freelancers and stuff that help us. So we've got 2 designers, 1 in training, and then we've got a project manager and 4 developers, an integrations person who like builds out all of our systems and keeps everything going, and then myself. So that's 10. And then we've got others as well.
So at Socialistics, one of the things that we're really passionate about is helping others and other organizations with our Socialistics Cares program. We always kind of highlight a charity or an organization that somebody on the team is super passionate about. And this week, I've got Artemis from our team. Artemis, tell us a little bit about yourself and your charity of choice.
Hi, so I'm Artemis. I'm actually an account manager here at Socialistics, and my charity of choice is actually Northwest Harvest. So growing up, I actually suffered from a lot of food insecurity myself, so this charity means a lot to me since they target people who are food insecure in Washington State. Actually, last year, 1 million people visited food banks in Washington State, and they help provide food that's nutritious and both accessible for people who are in need. So go ahead and check them out if you can, because what they're doing is amazing and very much needed.
Thank you so much, Artemis. If you want to check them out, make sure you take a look at our show notes. We'll have a direct link to the organization and how you can support them. Thanks for listening. Now, so one of the things that I love about my company is it's basic. It was used to be just me and like 8 other women, and I think a lot of that had to do more so with social media. Just kind of lends itself to that kind of gender dynamic. But also, I think I grew up with a single mom and giving single parents or single moms an opportunity to have a career and be around their kid. Like inherently, I was passionate about that because I kind of grew up in that environment. And full disclosure, I worked with Max on our new website, which I love. We worked with them on that. One of the things that stood out to me was, and as the team told me, that they felt like our site needed a little bit more of a kind of like a feminine feel. Like what we had before was really dark and masculine looking and feeling. And as I went through the process of trying to find a new web agency, I think that's one of the things that stood out with you and your team is that you had that, which nobody else did. Like, I mean, everybody knows when it comes to like programming and development, it's very obviously heavy male centric, which is unfortunate. I think that's probably starting to change a little bit, but that's something that stood out with your team. Like you kind of had a balance there. And I think in your portfolio and the people that we engaged with, that balance really stood out to us. Like these guys are really positioned to help us kind of see things from both perspectives in that regard. Was that purposeful in terms of who you have and how you do what you do, or did it just happen to play out that way?
I think as like with everything, when you're hiring for someone, just like when you're marketing to customers, you've kind of got like an avatar in your head of like who the right person for this is. Not all of our designers are female, but like when you think about who are the people that are going to love this job, that are going to be great at this, like those personality traits tend to be female. Yeah. However, I think what the real thing is that I'm looking for when I hire for that role specifically, which is the person that you were interacting with is a designer, is like being really, really organized and being a really great communicator and just being really smart and creative. Those are the things that I'm looking for. We actually don't hire designers with any knowledge of design. Sometimes they have like a little bit of UX experience from school. That's like my favorite degree. If we're talking about that avatar that I'm hiring for, it's someone with a degree in like UX or design or something like that, but they don't know how to design websites. We take them through a process of training them through an internship. And that's what turns them into the person who can do this job. They are the role that we're talking about here. They're both designers and developers. Actually, they're primarily designers, but they know how to develop as well.
Yeah, no, there's something unique there. I definitely noticed a difference when we were going through that process of talking to different web agencies, and there definitely something felt different about the conversations and the things that you guys are doing versus everybody else that really stood out. So it's interesting to kind of hear how you've kind of taken that approach in terms of, because I think that's where a lot of it lives, right? Is like, when you talk about somebody being a coder or a developer or somebody being a designer, it's like different parts of the brain. It's hard to be able to do both, but to have an understanding of both, I think is where there's a big difference. Because I think, and I'm just speculating here, that a lot of web agencies probably have really siloed approaches to it. They're like, we have a designer, we have a developer, that's all they do. They don't think about the other thing. And when they need the other thing, they just work together. Whereas I think true artistry that executes on good user experience is probably works better when you've got a person that speaks the language at least a little bit and understands it, so that that those things kind of align a little bit better. So that's certainly what we've experienced. So that's cool to hear how you've been able to kind of get it there.
I think it's essential because another reason that I think it's essential is the designer in our company is the client's point of contact. So you're going to have questions like, hey, how do I edit XYZ on my website? The designer needs your point of contact. It would be a terrible user experience if your point of contact didn't know anything about how your website worked. That would suck, right? So having them be really sharp and know how to, like, if they had to, they could go in and build the pages. Maybe it would take them longer than one of our full-time developers, but they could do it. Yeah, that's I think absolutely critical to our success.
Got it. So it sounds like things are in a good place. But what would you say is what's your biggest challenge right now? What's the thing that keeps you up at night, if anything, in terms of where you're at as a company, as an agency?
It's never really been a problem, but it definitely still gives me the most stress. Sales. I'm still the only person doing it. We've got good sales systems that bring in consistent leads. We have a great Upwork funnel. We have a great Clutch funnel. We have a good LinkedIn funnel. We're starting to build some other things too. My own marketing, like on my podcast and TikTok and stuff like that, has started bringing in some business as well. But in terms of predictability, like you said, we don't have a massive amount of our business that's retainer. We do have some, right? But it's not the 80-20, right? It's not the majority of our business. So that's my job, is I have to find sales. Gotcha.
What, it's interesting when you think of retainer business versus project, they both have their advantages and disadvantages. Obviously the advantage to a retainer is like that predictability, long-term kind of, predictability around your revenue. Whereas, with project based, it's like when it's done, it's gone. But it's a more tangible thing. I would argue that, and I could be wrong here, but I would imagine the life cycle, like the sales life cycle for you, is shorter than it is for us. When somebody's considering a long-term relationship and spending that money over a period of time, they're probably going to take a little bit more time with their decision. And with social media, there's some tangible piece to it. I mean, touch, taste, feel. They can see the content and stuff like that, but there are some elements to it that are kind of out in the ether that you just don't know. Whereas with a website, it's like, I need this thing, and then you deliver this thing, and then I have this thing. I can see it, I can touch it, I can feel it. So is there some truth to that in terms of I'm kind of curious about your sales life cycle. Like when you find a qualified lead, do you find that you're able to close those within a relatively short period of time?
Probably 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay.
Usually
Yeah,
it's
for sure.
it's like the first meeting, like we're going over what it is. I give them a ballpark price. And then if they don't flinch, usually then we
Yeah.
have another meeting like that week or the next week. And then usually the next week we close the deal.
Yeah, no, that sounds about right. We're about twice that, I would say. So that
Yeah.
my instincts were correct on that.
One thing that I
What?
think is really nice about like the project lifecycle though, instead of a retainer, is just
Yeah.
like a sense of accomplishment that the team gets, because you get
Right.
so much satisfaction like launching a website. And we had that conversation in the Slack channel. Everyone's patting each other on the back, like,
Yeah, it's
oh,
done.
we launched the website. It looks awesome. It's great. It's great for morale.
Yeah, no, I get that. What percentage of leads that you get would you say end up being qualified versus not?
I think it's like 32% right now.
32. So 32% of the leads that come in actually don't balk at your prices, are qualified. Is there, so when I think of qualification for you guys, obviously price plays into that. And if you're listening, like here, one of the things that, and I've done plenty of websites, so I understand it. It's very interesting because some people just don't understand the amount of time and effort and expertise that goes into the design process. I've come across clients in the past when I was kind of a freelancer, like, oh, I want a website, like, and then their expectation is it's like, oh, here's $500. I can give me my website. Go press your buttons and spit it out of the website machine. I'm like, no, that's not how it works. Quite actually.
Yeah.
So you get what you pay for, right? And I always think of things in the context of bronze, silver, gold. And it's interesting. Our journey. I did our first website. Then I paid somebody bronze. I paid them 3,000 or I think to do the website. You get what you pay for, and it was great. And then I think the next iteration was when we came to you, and I came at it. I'm like, well, I hope to spend about $5K a month on a website, and then I quickly realized what I wanted and what I was like, it didn't align. And then it was when I had the conversation with you guys. I'm like, okay, we need to reset our expectations here because they have what we want. But this is a different tier, so that's where we got to be if we want to do this thing. So it's interesting to hear. So would you say that when you have these leads come in and you say 32% of the leads that come in are qualified, is how much of that is price centric, or are there other elements that play into that?
A lot of it is price centric. I had a call today with someone who was willing to pay, but I didn't think we could accomplish what he wanted. Right. So for example, someone will come to us and they'll say, hey, I just started this business and I need to start getting a ton of traffic to my website. So I want you to rebuild it so that it starts getting traffic, right? I'm like, okay, hold on a second here. If you want me to rebuild your website and it's to generate traffic for you, you're going to be disappointed when I build you an awesome website, the perfect website, and it still gets no traffic. So let's talk about this and see like what are the steps that need to happen for you in order to start getting business from your website. Like we can throw up a bad landing page and get traffic to it, or we can throw up the best website and get no traffic. They can be correlated, but it's not causally linked, right?
Yep.
But most of the time it's price related.
Yeah. And when you think about the leads that come in, how much of them we kind of think of two buckets. We got solopreneurs and then actually I'd say three buckets. Solopreneurs, small business, when I say small business, less than $1 million, and then kind of corporate, bigger entities that are doing multi-million-dollar businesses. In terms of where you're at, in terms of the life cycle of your business, what's the projects that you work on? Do they live in one bucket more so than the other in that regard?
Typically, if they're less than $1 million, they can't afford us.
Okay.
$1 million plus, I would say. I'd say the sweet spot is probably 5 to 10.
Yeah. Gotcha. Awesome.
Yep. But that's not exclusively true. Like by any means, in some businesses, it may like at an earlier stage they can.
Yeah. So what's the next thing for you guys? Like, where do you want to take this agency? What's your kind of 2-year plan where you want to be?
I don't have a 2-year plan. I have a 4-year plan. I want to be at a place where I could sell this business for 10 million. I don't know if I will sell it when I get to that point, but I want it to be at a point where it's like, okay, this is something valuable that we've created here. Like this is a great business. One of my mentors says like the best way to get a business ready to sell is to build a business that you never want to sell. So I love that concept, and it's still inspired heavily by that book I cited earlier, Built to Sell. As you can tell.
Sure. No.
And so that's what I want to do. And it's kind of a volume game at this.
Yeah.
Like I think our prices probably will increase over the next 2 years. I don't know by how much, but it's going to get to the point where we start to build more teams of designers and developers, and it's battling one constraint to the next. So we just hired a new designer. Our constraint was capacity. We hired the new designer. Now he's being trained and he's doing a really great job. So now we're in the process of, okay, now we have to upgrade our sales funnels. Like, how are we going to get 2 more projects a month to keep this guy busy? And then I have to go back to the capacity. So it's going back and forth between those two over the next couple of years.
All right. So 4 years from now, you sell this thing. What are you doing then?
It's a great question.
Do you even know?
I got a cliche answer for you, which is start a SaaS company. But who knows? Who knows if that's what I end up doing? I thought about that too.
Yeah, I thought about that. I'm much older than you, so my answer to that is not as ambitious. But so I was curious. I think agency owners kind of like, what's the agency is usually a means to an end. You rarely see somebody start an agency and do that forever. At some point they want to exit, and then there's this other thing that they're kind of striving to be that's a little less stressful and demanding. So for me, It's like promoting a book and doing speaking gigs and helping other people, kind of find their path and learn from what I learned. That's kind of where I want to be. But I'm later in life, so I'm looking to I'm on the downside. Like, I'm not climbing the mountain anymore. I'm kind of at the top, and I'm looking at, working my way down. So
fair enough. And that appeals to me too, also, of like helping people who want to, climb that same mountain. If I get to the top and I find like, hey, there's a 3-step way to get to the top of this mountain, and you can do it in 3 less years, man, that would make so many people's lives easier if I could help them do that. So I see the appeal of that for sure.
Yeah.
And maybe SaaS isn't as easy as we think. I bet you there's a bunch of SaaS founders laughing at us now.
I've always wanted to do that, but I just the missing piece for me is I just didn't really ever know anybody or connected anybody that could do the technical side of it, because that's just where that's where it ends for me. Like I have nothing of value to bring on that side of it. So awesome. Well, is there anything that I didn't ask you or anything that you want to add that you think might round out the conversation?
No, but if anybody's in that same position where you're kind of trying to do all things for all people, and you're finding yourself super stressed out, you don't need to take as drastic of an action as I did to solve that problem. But the solution has to be a flavor of build a process that actually makes it so you know what you're doing each time before you start doing it. Like, if you've noticed, there's a motif in my career, which is like shoot first and figure out where it's pointed later. Like that is essentially the kid that I was when I started this company. And that's what got me into a lot of trouble. So really building up blueprints for all the processes and deliverables you want to give clients is going to make your life way easier. And that's the only advice I can give on that. No,
I love that. The biggest takeaway for those that are listening that kind of piggybacks on that is I've never talked to or heard from somebody that vertical down either by what they offered or who they offered it to and said that was a bad idea. Like it's really the path that you need to take, especially if you're just starting out. It's a tough world to compete. So awesome stuff. Well, Max, thank you so much for carving out some time today. How can people find you and what you do?
Yeah, sheragency.com, SHER agency.com. Come visit us, take a look at our stuff, and there's ways to get in touch with me specifically on there if you're looking to contact me.
Awesome. And I can speak, like I said earlier, Max and his team did our website, and we absolutely love it. So if that's a need of yours, you could, they're the ones to go to. Trust me, I put in the legwork on it. So again, thanks, Max, for joining us. And for those of you that are listening, like, share, subscribe. Thank you for listening. We'll catch you at the next episode of Anti-Agency.
Thanks, everybody.